Chapter 80. I purposely and probably wisely skipped the first day, then the second, and the third day of the courtroom circus. I didn't want to face the world press or the public any more than I had to. I felt like I was on trial too. A cold-blooded murderer was on trial, but the investigation continued more feverishly than ever for me. I still had the Jane Does to solve and the disappearance of Christine, if I could open up any new leads. I wanted to make certain that Schaefer would not walk away a free man, and most important, I desperately wanted finally to know the truth about Christine's disappearance. I had to know. My greatest frustration was that because of the diplomatic shenanigans, I'd never gotten to question Schaefer. I would have given anything for a few hours with him. I turned the southern end of our attic into a war room. There was an excess of unused space up there anyway. I moved an old mahogany dining table out from the shadows. I rewired an ancient window fan, which made the attic space almost bearable most days, especially early in the morning and late in the evening when I did my best work up there in my Hermitage. I set up my laptop on the table and I pinned different colored index cards to the walls to keep what I considered the most important pieces of the case before me at all times. Inside several bulky and misshapen cardboard boxes, I had all the rest of it, every scrap of evidence on Christine's abduction, and everything I could find on the Jane Does. The murder cases formed a maddening puzzle created over several years, one that was not given two easy solutions. I was trying to play a complex game against a skillful opponent, but I didn't know the rules of his game or how it was played. That was Schaefer's unfair advantage. I had found some useful notes in Patsy Hampton's detective logs, and they led me to interview the teenage boy, Michael Ormson, who'd chatted online with Schaefer about the Four Horsemen. I continued to work closely with Chuck Hufstedler of the FBI. Chuck felt guilty about giving Patsy Hampton the original lead, especially since I'd come to him first. I used his guilt. Both the Bureau and Interpol were doing an active search of the game on the internet. I'd visited countless chat rooms myself, but had encountered no one other than young Ormson, who was aware of the mysterious game. It was only because Schaefer had taken a chance and gone into the chat room that he'd been discovered. I wondered what other chances he'd taken. Following Schaefer's arrest at the Farragut, we did a little search on his Jaguar, and I'd also spent nearly an hour at his home. Before his lawyers knew I was there. I spoke to his wife Lucy and his son Robert, who confirmed that he played a game called the Four Horsemen. He'd been playing for 7 or 8 years. Neither the wife nor the son knew any of the other players or anything about them. They didn't believe that Jeffrey Schaefer had done anything wrong. The son called his father the straight arrow of straight arrows. Lucy Schaefer called him a good man, and she seemed to believe it. I found role-playing game magazines as well as dozens of sets of game dice in Schaefer's den, but no other physical evidence relating to his game. Schaefer was careful. He covered his tracks well. He was in intelligence after all. I couldn't imagine him throwing dice to select his victims, but maybe that helped to account for the irregular pattern of the Jane Does. His attorney Jules Halpern complained loudly and vigorously about the invasion of Schaefer's home, and had I uncovered any useful evidence, it would certainly have been suppressed. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough time, and Schaefer was too clever to keep anything incriminating in his house anyway. He'd made one big mistake. He wasn't likely to make another, was he? Sometimes very late at night, as I worked in the attic, I would stop for a while and remember something about Christine. The memories were painful and sad, but also soothing to me. I began to look forward to these times when I could think about her without any interruption. Some nights I would wander down to the piano in the sun porch and play songs that had been important to us. Unforgettable, Moonglow, It's Wonderful. I could still remember how she looked, especially when I visited her at her place. Faded jeans, bare feet, t-shirt, or maybe her favorite yellow crewneck sweater, a tortoiseshell comb in her long hair that always smelled of shampoo. I didn't want to feel sorry for myself, but I just couldn't help feeling miserably bad. I was caught in limbo, not knowing one way or the other what had really happened to Christine. I couldn't let her go. It was paralyzing me, crippling me, making me feel so damn sad and empty. I knew I needed to move on with my life, but I couldn't do it. I needed answers, at least a few of them. Is Christine part of the game? I kept wondering. I was obsessed with the game. Am I part of it? I believed I was, and in a way I hoped she was too. It was my only hope that she might still be alive. Chapter 81. And so I found myself a player in a truly bizarre game that was habit-forming for all the wrong reasons. I began to make up my own rules. I brought in new players. I was in this game to win. Chuck Hufstedler from the FBI offices in D.C. continued to be helpful. The more I talked to him, the more I realized that he'd had a serious crush on Detective Hampton. His loss and mine with Christine united us. I climbed up to the attic late Friday night after watching The Mask of Zorro with Damon, Janny, Nana, and Rosie the cat. I had a few more facts to check before going to bed. I booted up the computer, logged on, and heard the familiar message, "You have mail." Ever since that night in Bermuda, those words had given me a terrible fright, a chill that tightened my body from head to toe. Sandy Greenberg from Interpol was replying to one of my emails. She and I had worked together on the Mr. Smith case and had become friends. I had asked her to check on several things for me. "Call me any time tonight, Alex, and I mean any time. Your irritating doggedness may have paid off. It's vitally important that you call, Sandy." I called Sandy in Europe, and she picked up after the second ring. "Alex, I think we found one of them. It was your bloody idea that worked. Schaefer was playing a game with at least one of his old cronies from MI6. You were spot on." "Are you sure it's one of the game players?" I asked her. "Pretty sure," she shot back. "I'm sitting here now." Of Jurors 4 Horsemen on my Mac. As you know, the horsemen are conquer, famine, war, and death. What a creepy bunch. Anyway, I did what you asked. I talked to some contacts from MI6 who found out that Schaefer and this one chap regularly keep in touch on the computer. I have all your notes too, and they're very good. I can't believe how much you figured out from back there in the colonies. You're a very sick puppy too. Thanks, I said. I let Sandy ramble on for a few minutes. A while back, I recognized that she was a lonely person, and that even though she sometimes put up a cantankerous front, she craved company. The name this chap uses in the game is Conker. Conker lives in Dorking, Surrey, in England, Sandy told me. His real name is Oliver Highsmith, and he's retired from MI6. Alex, he was running several agents in Asia at the same time Schaefer was there. Schaefer worked under him. It's 8 a.m. over here. Why don't you call the bastard? Sandy suggested. Or send him an email. I have an address for him, Alex. I started to wonder about the other players in the Four Horsemen game. Were there really 4 of them, or was that just the name of the game? Who were these players? How was the game actually played? Did all, or indeed any of them, act out their fantasies in real life? My message to Conker was simple and straightforward and not too threatening, I hoped. I didn't see how he could resist answering me. Dear Mr. Highsmith, I am a homicide detective in Washington, D.C., looking for information about Colonel Jeffrey Schaefer pertaining to the Four Horsemen. I understand that Schaefer worked for you in Asia. Time is of the essence. I need your help. Please contact Detective Alex Cross. Chapter 82. I was surprised when a message came right back. Oliver Highsmith, Conker, must have been online when my email went through. Detective Cross. I am well aware of you, since the ongoing murder trial is a rather big story in England, and in the rest of Europe for that matter. I have known G.S. for a dozen years or more. He did work under me briefly. He is more an acquaintance than a close friend, so I have no expertise or bias about his guilt or innocence. I hope it's the latter, of course. Now, as to your question about the Four Horsemen, the game, and it is a fantasy game, detective, is highly unusual in that all of the players assume the role of game master. That is to say, each of us controls his own fate, his own story. G.S.'s story is even more daring and unusual. His character, the rider on the pale horse, Death, is deeply flawed. One might even say evil. The character is somewhat like the person on trial in Washington, or so it seems to me. However, I must make a few important points. The appearance of any murder fantasies in our game always occurred days after reports of murders in the newspapers. Believe me, this was thoroughly checked by us once GS was accused. It was even brought to the attention of Inspector Jones at the Security Service in London, so I'm surprised you weren't informed before now. The service have been to see me about GS and were completely satisfied, I assume, since they haven't been back. Also, the other players, who have themselves been checked out by security, are all represented by positive characters in the game, and as I've said, as powerfully involving as Horsemen is, it is nevertheless only a game. By the way, did you know that by some scholarly accounts there is a 5th horseman? Might that be you, Dr. Cross? FYI, the contact at the service is Mr. Andrew Jones. I trust he will vouch for the veracity of my statements. If you wish to converse further, do so at your own risk. I am 67 years of age, retired from intelligence, parentheses as I like to put it, close parentheses, and a rather famous windbag. I wish you much luck in your search for truth and justice. I missed the chase myself. Conqueror. I read the message, then reread it. Much luck in your search? Was that as loaded a line as it sounded? And was I now a player, the fifth horseman? Chapter 83. I went to court every day the following week, and like so many other people, I got hooked on the trial. Jules Halpern was the most impressive orator I had ever watched in a courtroom, but Catherine Fitzgibbon was effective as well. The verdict would depend on whom the jury believed more. It was all theater, a game. I remember that as a kid I used to regularly watch a courtroom drama with Nana called The Defenders. Every show began with a deep voice narrator saying something to the effect of, "The American justice system is far from perfect, but it is still the very best justice system in the world." That may be true, but as I sat in the courtroom in Washington, I couldn't help thinking that the murder trial, the judge, the jury, the lawyers, and all the rules were just another elaborate game, and that Jeffrey Schaefer was already planning his next foray, savoring every move that the prosecution made against him. He was still in control of the game board. He was the game master. He knew it, and so did I. I watched Jules Halpern conduct smooth examinations that were designed to give the impression that his monstrous, psychopathic client was as innocent as a newborn baby. Actually, it was easy to drift off during the lengthy cross-examinations. I never really missed anything, though, since all the important points were repeated over and over ad nauseum. Alex Cross. I heard my name mentioned and refocused my attention on Jules Halpern. He produced a blown-up photograph that had appeared in the Post on the day after the murder. The photo had been taken by another tenant at the Farragut and sold to the newspaper. Halpern leaned in close to the witness on the stand, a man named Carmine Lopez, a night doorman at the apartment building where Patsy Hampton had been murdered. "Mr. Lopez, I show you Defendant's Exhibit J, a photograph of my client and Detective Alex Cross. It was taken in the 10th floor hallway soon after the discovery of Detective Hampton's body. The blow-up was large enough for me to see most of the detail from where I was sitting in the 4th row. The photo had always been a shocker to me. In it, Schaefer looked as if he had just stepped out of the pages of GQ. In comparison, my clothes were tattered and dirty. I had just come off my crazy marathon run from the zoo, and I had been down in the garage with poor Patsy's body. My fists were clenched tightly, and I seemed to be roaring out anger at Schaefer. Pictures do lie. We know that. The photograph was highly inflammatory, and I felt it could instill prejudice in the minds of the jurors. Is this a fair representation of how the two men looked at 10:30 that evening? Halpern asked the doorman. Yes, sir, it's very fair. That's how I remember it. Jules Halpern nodded as if he were receiving vital information for the first time. Would you now describe, in your own words, what Detective Cross looked like at that time? He asked. The doorman hesitated and seemed slightly confused by the question. I wasn't. I knew where Halpern was going now. Was he dirty? Halpern jumped in and asked the simplest possible question. Dirty, sure. He was a mess. And was he sweaty? The defense lawyer asked. Sweaty? Yeah, we all were. From being down in the garage, I guess. It was a real hot night. Nose running? Yes, sir. Were Detective Cross's clothes ripped, Mr. Lopez? Yes, they were, ripped and dirty. Jules Halpern looked at the jury first, then at his witness. Were Detective Cross's clothes blood-stained? Yes, they sure were. That's what I noticed first, the blood. Was the blood anywhere else, Mr. Lopez? On his hands. You couldn't miss it. I sure didn't. And Mr. Schaefer, how did Mr. Schaefer look? He was clean, not mussed at all. He seemed pretty calm and collected. Did you see any blood on Mr. Schaefer? No, sir, no blood. Halpern nodded, then faced the jury. Mr. Lopez, which of the two men looked more like someone who might have just committed a murder? Detective Cross, the doorman said without hesitation. Objection, the district attorney screamed, but not before the damage was done. Chapter 84. That afternoon, the defense was scheduled to call Chief of Detectives George Pittman. The assistant district attorney, Catherine Fitzgibbon, knew that Pittman was on the docket, and she asked me to meet her for lunch. If you have an appetite before Pittman goes on, she added. Catherine was smart, and she was thorough. She had put away nearly as many bad guys as Jules Halpern had set free. We got together over sandwiches at a crowded deli near the courthouse. Neither of us was thrilled about Pittman's upcoming appearance. My reputation as a detective was being ruined by the defense, and it was a hard thing to watch and do nothing. She bit down into a hefty Reuben sandwich that squirted mustard onto her forefinger and thumb. Catherine smiled. Sloppy, but worth it. You and Pittman are really at odds, right? More like you hate each other's guts. It's serious dislike, and it's mutual, I told her. He's tried to do me in a couple of times. He thinks I'm a threat to his career. Catherine was attacking her sandwich. There's a thought. Would you be a better chief of detectives? Wouldn't run, wouldn't serve, if elected. I wouldn't be good cooped up in an office playing political ping-pong. Catherine laughed. She's one of those people who can find humor almost anywhere. This is just frickin' great, Alex. The defense is calling the chief of detectives as one of its damn witnesses. He's listed as hostile, but I don't think he is. Catherine and I finished off the rest of her sandwich. Well, let's find out what Mr. Halpern has up his sleeve today, she said. At the start of the afternoon session, Jules Halpern did a careful and thorough setup of Pittman's credentials, which sounded reasonably impressive in the abstract. Undergrad at George Washington, then law school at American. 24 years on the police force with medals for bravery and citations from 3 different mayors. Chief Pittman, how would you describe Detective Cross's record in the department? Asked Halpern. I cringed in my seat, felt my brow wrinkle, my eyes narrow. Here we go, I thought. Detective Cross has been involved in some high-profile cases that the department has solved, he said, and left it at that. Not exactly praise, but at least he hadn't gone on the attack. Halpern nodded sagely. What, if anything, has changed his performance recently? Pittman looked my way, then answered. A woman he was seeing disappeared while they were on a trip together in Bermuda. Since that time, he's been distracted and distant, quick to anger, not himself. Suddenly, I wanted to speak up in the courtroom. Pittman didn't know the first thing about Christine and me. Chief Pittman, was Detective Cross ever a suspect in the disappearance of his girlfriend, Mrs. Christine Johnson? Pittman nodded. That's standard police procedure. I'm sure he was questioned. But his behavior on the job has changed since her disappearance? Yes, his concentration isn't the same. He's missed days of work. It's all a matter of record. Has Detective Cross been asked to seek professional help? Yes. Did you ask him to seek help yourself? I did. He and I have worked together for a number of years. He was under stress. He's under a lot of stress. Is that fair to say? Yes. He hadn't closed a single case recently. Halpern nodded. A couple of weeks before the Hampton homicide, you suspended some detectives he was friendly with. Pittman's look was somber. Unfortunately, I did. Why did you suspend the detectives? The detectives were investigating cases outside the auspices of the department. Is it fair to say they were making up their own rules, acting like vigilantes? Catherine Fitzgibbon rose to her feet and objected, but Judge Fesco allowed the question. Pittman answered, I don't know about that. Vigilantes is a strong word, but they were working without proper supervision. The case is still under investigation. Was Detective Cross part of the group that was making up its own rules to solve homicides? I'm not certain, but he was spoken to about the matter. I didn't believe he could handle a suspension at that time. I warned him and let it slide. I shouldn't have, said Pittman. No further questions. None needed, I thought. Chapter 85. That night, after he left the courtroom, Schaefer was flying high. He thought that he was winning the game. He was manic as hell, and it felt both good and bad. He was parked in the dark garage under Boo Cassidy's building. Most manics aren't really aware of it when they're exhibiting signs of a manic episode, but Schaefer knew. His spirals didn't come out of nowhere. They built and built. The irony and the danger of being back in her building weren't lost on him. Scene of the crime and all that rot. He wanted to go to Southeast tonight, but that was too risky. He couldn't hunt, not now. He had something else in mind, the next few moves in his game. It was unusual, though not unheard of, for the defendant in a first-degree homicide trial to be out roaming the streets, but that had been one of the prerequisites of his dropping his immunity. What choice did the prosecution have? None at all. If the DA hadn't agreed, he had a free pass to keep him out of jail. Schaefer followed a tenant he'd seen several times into the lift from the garage and took it to Boo's apartment. He rang the doorbell, waited, heard her padding across the parquet floor. Yes, Act 1 of tonight's performance was about to begin. He knew she was watching him through the door's peephole, just as he had watched Alex Cross through it on the night Patsy Hampton had got her just desserts. He had seen Boo a few times after his release, but then he'd cut her off. When he'd stopped seeing her, she lost it. Boo had called him at work, then at home, and constantly on his car phone, until he changed the bloody number. At her worst, she reminded him of the nutcase Glenn Close had played in the movie Fatal Attraction. He wondered if he could still push her buttons. She was a fairly bright woman, and that was a large part of her problem. She thought far too much, double and triple think. Most men, especially dull-witted Americans, didn't like that, which made her even crazier. He put his face against the door, felt its cool wood on his cheek. He started his act. I've been petrified to see you, Boo. You don't know what it's been like. One slip-up, anything they can use against me, and I'm finished. And what makes it worse is that I'm innocent. You know that. I talked to you the whole time from my house to yours that night. You know I didn't kill that detective. Elizabeth, Boo, please say something. At least curse at me. Let the anger out. Doctor? There was no answer. He rather liked that. It made him respect her more than he had. What the hell? She was more screwed up than he was. You know exactly what I'm going through. You're the only one who understands my episodes. I need you, Boo. You know I'm manic depressive, bipolar, whatever the hell you shrinks want to call my condition. Boo. Then Schaefer actually started to cry, which nearly made him laugh. He uttered loud, wrenching sobs. He crouched on his haunches and held his head. He knew he was a far better actor than so many of the high-priced fakers he saw in the movies. The door to the apartment slowly opened. Boo-hoo, she whispered. Is poor Jeff in pain? What a shame. What a bitch, he thought. But he had to see her. She was testifying soon. He needed her tonight, and he needed her help in the courtroom. Hello, Boo, he whispered back. Chapter 86. Act 2 of the evening's performance. She stared at him with huge dark brown eyes that looked like amber beads, the kind she bought at her swanky shops. She lost weight, but that made her sexier to him, more desperate. She wore navy walking shorts and an elegant pink silk t-shirt, but she also wore her pain. You hurt me like no one ever has before, she whispered. He held himself under control. Playing a truly award-winning performance. I'm fighting for my life. I swear, all I think about is killing myself. Haven't you heard anything I've said? Besides, do you want your picture all over the tabloids again? Don't you see? That's why I've been staying away from you. She laughed bitterly, haughtily. It's going to happen anyway when I testify. The photographers will be everywhere I go. Schaefer shut his eyes. Well, that will be your chance to hurt me back, darling. She shook her head and frowned. You know I wouldn't do that. No, Jeff, why didn't you at least call? You're such a bastard. Schaefer hung his head, the repentant bad boy. You know how close I was to the edge before all this happened. Now it's worse. Do you expect me to act like a responsible adult? She gave a wry smile. He saw a book on the hallway table behind her. Man and His Symbols, Carl Jung, how fitting. No, I suppose not, Jeff. What do you want? Drugs? I need you. I want to hold you, Boo, that's all. That night she gave him what he wanted. They made love like animals on the gray velvet love seat she used for her clients, then on the JFK-style rocking chair where she always sat during sessions. He took her body and her soul. Then she gave him drugs, antidepressants, painkillers, most of her samples. Boo was still able to get the samples from her ex, a psychiatrist. Schaefer didn't know what their relationship was, and frankly, he didn't care. He swallowed some Librium and shot up Vicodin at her place. Then he took Boo again, both of them naked and sweating and frenzied on the kitchen counter. The butcher block, he thought. He left her place around 11. He realized he was feeling worse than before he'd gone there. But he knew what he was going to do. He'd known before he went to Boo's. It would explode their little minds, everyone's, the press, the jury. Now for Act 3. Chapter 87. At a little past midnight, I got an emergency call that blew off the top of my head. Within minutes, I had the old Porsche up close to 90 and Rock Creek Parkway, the siren screaming at the night, or maybe at Jeffrey Schaefer. I arrived at Rama at 12:25. EMS ambulances, squad cars, TV news trucks were parked all over the street. Several neighbors of the Schaefers were up and had come outside their large, expensive houses to observe the nightmare scene. They couldn't believe this was happening in their upscale enclave. The chatter and buzz of several police radios filled the night air. A news helicopter was already hovering overhead. A truck marked CNN arrived and parked right behind me. I joined a detective named Malcolm Ainsley on the front lawn. We knew each other from other homicide scenes, even a few parties. Suddenly, the front door of the Schaefer house opened. 2 EMTs were carrying a stretcher outside. Dozens of cameras were flashing. "It's Schaefer," Ainsley told me. "Son of a bitch tried to kill himself, Alex. Slit his wrist and took a lot of drugs. There were open prescription packets everywhere. Must have had second thoughts, though. Called for help." I had enough information about Schaefer from the discovery interviews preceding the trial and from my own working profile on him to begin to make some very educated guesses about what might have happened. My first thought was that he suffered from some kind of bipolar disorder that caused both manic and depressive episodes. A second possibility was cyclothymia, which can manifest itself in numerous hypomanic episodes, as well as depressive symptoms. Its associated symptoms could include inflated self-esteem, a decreased need for sleep, excessive involvement in quote-unquote pleasurable activities, and an increase in goal-directed activity, in Schaefer's case, maybe, an intensified effort to win his game. I moved forward as if I were floating in a very bad dream, the worst I could imagine. I recognized one of the EMS techies, Nina DeSessa. I'd worked with her a few times before in Georgetown. "We got to the bastard just in time," Nina said and narrowed her dark eyes. "Too bad, huh?" "Serious attempt?" I asked her. Nina shrugged. "Hard to tell for sure. He hacked up his wrist pretty good. Just the left one, though. Then the drugs, lots of drugs, doctor samples." I shook my head in utter disbelief. "But he definitely called out for help." According to the wife and son, they heard him call out from his den. "Daddy needs help. Daddy is dying. Daddy is sick." Well, he got that part right. Daddy is incredibly sick. Daddy is a monumental sicko. I went over to the red and white ambulance. News cameras were still flashing all over the street. My mind was unhinged, reeling. Everything is a game to him. The victims in Southeast, Patsy Hampton, Christine, now this. He's even playing with his own life. His pulse is still strong, I heard as I got close to the ambulance. I could see one of the EMT workers checking the EKG inside the van. I could even hear beeps from the machine. Then I saw Schaefer's face. His hair was drenched with perspiration, and his face was as pale as a sheet of white paper. He stared into my eyes, tried to focus. Then he recognized me. "You did this to me," he said, mustering strength, suddenly trying to sit up on the stretcher. "You ruined my life for your career. You did this. You're responsible. Oh gosh, my poor family. Why is this happening to us?" The TV cameras were rolling film, and they got his entire Academy Award quality performance, just as Jeffrey Schaefer knew they would. Chapter 88. The trial had to be recessed due to Schaefer's suicide attempt. The courtroom shenanigans probably wouldn't resume until the following week. Meanwhile, the media had another feeding frenzy, including banner headlines in the Washington Post, the New York Times, USA Today. At least it gave me time to work on a few more angles. Schaefer was good. Gosh, he was good at this. I had been talking with Sandy Greenberg nearly every night. She was helping me collect information on the other game players. She'd even gone and talked with Conqueror. She said she doubted that Oliver Highsmith was a killer. He was late 60s, seriously overweight, and wheelchair-bound. Sandy called the house at 7 that night. She's a good friend. Obviously, she was burning the midnight oil for me. I took the call in the sanctuary of my attic office. "Andrew Jones of the security service will see you," she announced in her usual perky and aggressive manner. "Isn't that great news?" "I'll tell you, it is. Actually, he's eager to meet with you, Alex. He didn't say it to me directly, but I don't think he's too keen on Colonel Schaefer. Wouldn't say why. Even more fortuitous, he's in Washington. He's a top man. He matters to the intelligence arena. He's very good, Alex, a straight shooter." I thanked Sandy and then immediately called Jones at his hotel. He answered the call in his room. "Yes, hello. It's Andrew Jones. Who is this, please?" "It's Detective Alex Cross of the Washington Police. I just got off the line with Sandy Greenberg. How are you?" "Good, very good. Well, not really. I've had better weeks, months. Actually, I stayed here in my room, hoping that you'd call. Would you like to meet, Alex? Is there some place where we wouldn't stand out too much?" I suggested a bar on M Street in half an hour, and I arrived there a minute or two early. I recognized Jones from his description on the phone. Broad, beefy, red-faced, just your average ex-rugby type. Though I never bloody played, don't even watch the drivel. Oh, yes, flaming red hair and matching mustache. That should help, no? It did. We sat in a dark booth in back and got to know each other. For the next 45 minutes, Jones filled me in on several important things, not the least of which was politics and decorum within the English intelligence and police communities. Lucy Schaefer's father's good name and standing in the army, and the concern for his reputation, and the desire of the government to avoid an even dicier scandal than the current mess. "Alex, if it were true that one of our agents committed cold-blooded murders while posted abroad, and that British intelligence knew nothing about it, the scandal would be a true horror and a major embarrassment. But if MI6 knew anything about what Colonel Schaefer is suspected of doing, well, it's absolutely unthinkable." "Did it?" I asked him. "Is this situation unthinkable?" "I won't answer that, Alex. You know I can't. But I am prepared to help you if I possibly can." "Why?" I asked. "Then why now?" "We needed your help on this before the trial began." "Fair question. Good question. We're prepared to help because You now have information that could cause us a hell of a lot of trouble. You're privy to the unthinkable." I said nothing. I thought I knew what he was alluding to, though. "You've discovered a fantasy game called the Four Horsemen. There are 4 players, including Schaefer. We know you've already contacted Oliver Highsmith. What you probably don't know yet, but we'll find out eventually, is that all the players are former or current agents. That is to say, Jeffrey Schaefer might be just the beginning of our problems." "All 4 of them are murderers?" I asked. Andrew Jones didn't answer. He didn't have to.